Welcome back. This year's midterm races have made us here at CBS News create something that we've never used before. Major Garrett anchors this panel from our democracy desk.
Thank you, Lilia. So we have a democracy desk as part of our coverage tonight. It's the first time CBS News has ever done this, and why? Because there's so much energy, much of it positive, but some of it deeply negative and disruptive about how our democracy functions, meaning how not only do we cast ballots, but how do we count them, and how believable that count actually is. And there's a great news story there to help me tell that as we watch everything tonight in this fundamental aspect of democracy. David Berger, Jeff Pegues, and Scott MacFarlane. David, let me start with you. As we watch the vote counts come in, let's put some baseline facts about how that process works and why, if in some states election results come in a little bit later than people expect, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, not only is there nothing wrong, that's the way we've always done it. It's very, very normal. It's what we would expect to see as our neighbors and our fellow citizens are working throughout the night to count those ballots accurately. Getting it right is more important than getting it fast. We have 10,000 different election jurisdictions all over the country, and our ballots are very complex, multiple pages, dozens of races. It's actually a miracle we can count them as fast as we do. We just might have to be patient, especially if margins are narrow, and in places where they can't start processing, for instance, mail ballots like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin.
And I'm glad you mentioned, David, that word processing, because it's going to be talked about a lot tonight. Help our viewers understand what processing means and why it's important in that pace of counting.
Right. So when someone goes and votes in person, either early or on election day, they get validated at that moment or given a ballot which they actually can put into a scanner. When someone votes by mail, as many, many millions of Americans do, and that's been something we've been doing since the Civil War, that ballot has to be validated before a ballot is then put into a scanner and counted, because we want to make sure the right person is voting. We want to make sure they are who they say they are and they haven't voted elsewhere, that they've only voted once. The process is very, very secure. We do that very, very well, but that takes time. And states like Georgia and Florida have allowed pre-processing well in advance of the elections. They're ready to count those ballots.
Sometimes 2 and 3 weeks they can do this work.
Upon receipt.
But in some states, they can't do that until Election Day itself. That may slow down some of the results. So in that void of period of time, Jeff Pegues, when people are being like, who won? Who won? Who won? You're not telling me yet. That opens a space of volatility, does it not?
Yeah, especially in this heightened threat environment. That's what some law enforcement officials are calling it. But they are concerned about this idea of people using conspiracy theories to fuel violence. That's a major concern right now. But you have law enforcement and state and local law enforcement as well. They're working together. They're communicating.
And they're going to be watching social media platforms for those places to see where they first arise and do they spread.
Exactly, exactly. And of course, that's what they don't want to see. But they are prepared for the potential for violence. I think, post-January 6th, you have to be, given the amount of threats they're seeing. We've talked about this before against election workers. They've had, about 1,000 on record. They've launched about 11% of those 1,000 have turned into investigations. But there are election officials across the country who don't think the Department of Justice has done enough because they've only charged 8 cases. However, they say they are watching for not only threats against election workers, but also voter intimidation. I asked the Attorney General about that, and he made it clear that they are going to be monitoring that because, of course, he believes everybody should have a chance to vote.
Absolutely. Scott MacFarlane, I'm going to use an SAT word here, dichotomy. What strikes me is there is this sense among some Republicans that this system has some warped or fraudulent qualities to it when, as David Berger and I wrote in our most recent book, the system that we use is more verified and verifiable and transparent than ever. But there are lots of people who are running on ballots in this election who've raised some manner of questions about the integrity of this process.
Let me give an SAT word right back at you, Major. There has been a jurisprudential
That's a bigger one. That's a bigger. You win.
I took it to the next level. There have been federal judges who've said this baseless set of election claims from 2020 led to the violence January 6th and will lead to future violence if we don't stop it. with that foundation, there are 308 federal and statewide candidates who have, in some way or shape or form, denied the results of the 2020 election. That includes dozens of incumbents who claim fraud on the very ballots upon which they were elected in 2020. This includes gubernatorial candidates. This includes Secretary of State candidates who would help administer elections if they prevail in their races tonight. And this includes any number of incumbents who on January 6, 2021, in the U.S. House voted to decertify the results even after the Capitol insurrection. They are not just a trickle or a stream of candidates, Major. They're a tidal wave. There are hundreds of them.
David, I know you don't know the answer to this question, but I want you to help our audience. They could hear Scott MacFarlane and say, wait a minute, people who are denying the 2020 election might win positions of Secretary of State. What are the implications of that? Help them understand.
Well, there are some really bad implications, obviously, because those positions are, in most states, the chief election official, and they will oversee elections. Now, they don't run elections. Elections are run at the county level or at the city level.
And they don't decide elections.
That's exactly right. And there are, one thing we know from the post-election 2020 period of time is that actually the courts did hold. They held the people denying the election to an evidentiary standard, another SAT word.
Show your work.
And they said, no, if you're going to say the election was stolen, you got to bring proof. And we sit here 2 years after that election, and still not one shred of proof has been brought to any court or law enforcement agency. But the damage they can do in delegitimizing an election that they're overseeing and failing to provide support for those county election officials and creating vague standards that might allow for an opening for a corrupt candidate to delegitimize the process after the election if they think they're losing, that is very, very dangerous. It's very volatile.
And Jeff, you've told us here that if we don't see you appearing very much as the night progresses,
always a good thing if you don't
it's a good
see me.
thing.
Yes.
But the simple truth is, those you have talked to have said it's not just tonight.
Yeah.
That in the days after that, there could be this period of volatility and this edginess about what's going on and how people might react.
Exactly, especially in those states where, the results might be contested. Those are the states you have to watch, because since 2021, a lot of the threats that law enforcement sees against, people, the poll workers, election officials, they're happening in states where the vote has been contested. And so post-midterm elections, you're going to have to watch those states, see what happens in those states. And that's what law enforcement is doing. Because as you said, those are the states where you could see the most volatility and people sort of acting out in response to the contested elections.
Scott MacFarlane, very quickly. So some of those who've raised questions could win, and they'll be in the awkward position, it seems to me, of saying, well, this system suddenly got better when it's the same system. Do you think that could have some kind of effect, possibly to calm down this specter of future denialism?
I don't think the risk from election denialism is limited to those tight, competitive states. It could happen in a state that's overwhelmingly blue or overwhelmingly red. That's the pernicious danger here.
Scott MacFarlane, Jeff Pegues, David Berger. Lilia, back to you. We'll be at the Democracy Desk all night long.